Here.
Yes, from Mr. Ledner.
And this is
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This regular meeting of the Township Council is being held in accordance with the scheduled meetings of the Township Council, established and adopted by the Township Council, which schedule designating the time, date, and place of this meeting. Adequate public notice of this meeting has been provided pursuant to the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Act. We are using an electronic amplifying recording device in order to obtain a clear and audible record, and request all those wish to speak be recognized and state your name and address directly to the microphone. The recording device will be solely utilized by the Township Clerk's Office for preparation of the minutes and shall be the official record of the Township Council meetings. Madam Clerk, may I have the roll call, please?
Mr. Atkinson?
Present.
Ms. Reed? Here. Mr. Minio?
Here.
Mrs. Stubbs? Mrs. Henry? Here. Mrs. Strato? Here. Mr. Mercado?
Present.
Mr. Parliament?
Here.
Mr. Cardis?
Here.
Mr. Rosner?
Here.
Chief Harkins?
Here.
Mr. Trevor?
Here. Before we open up our public portion, this is yours. Those who are viewing online, I apologize for the delay. Our workshop runs from 6:30 to 7:30, but our public portion went a little lengthier, so I do apologize for starting later. We'll look to firm that up next time. Our public portions for agenda items only is for a 15-minute time period. Each speaker is entitled to 3 minutes. After after everyone has had their turns, they wish to speak again, they may do so. Then, anybody who would like to speak during the public portion for agenda items only. Mr. Sweet.
Good evening, Council. Sam Sweet from Muriel. On the regular agenda, resolution, 106, approving and introducing notice for public hearing and public inspection. Last year, we were given all the backup documentation, and I understand that, well, I did ask for it again, but I have to wait until it gets approved by council. Would it be possible for me to get that same paperwork again this year?
The same information that Mr. Cardis provided you last year, we'll grant that after all members of council have received that information.
Okay, and will that be given via email or picked up tomorrow, or?
I could have it scanned and sent to you, or you can pick it up.
Can I pick it up tomorrow on the way? Like, just give you a call in the morning, or give Nancy a call? I'll pick,
Let me run the copies in the morning. What time are you going to come by?
like 9 a.m.? Is that enough time?
Till then.
Okay. All right, that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Ms. Coyne.
Ms. Coyne, she's Laney Road. I just wanted on public record that February 24th, 2020, Ordinance 02004 amended the Lakeland Complex Phase 1, Block 12301 redevelopment plan to add multifamily housing as a permitted and preferable use, amending the redevelopment plan and the land use element. It was adopted on March 9th, 2020.
That wasn't an agenda item, was it?
You told me I could speak.
During the public portion, the second public portion.
Oh, I'm sorry, I got my
Okay.
public portions
All
messed
right.
up, but I do have an agenda item.
Okay.
Little Pond, Ordinance 02007. When this was previously introduced back in July 2019, Rick Eustace asked how the process worked. And I believe that you said that the first reading, that no action takes place. Is that correct? Like the first reading is just a first reading?
It's first reading followed by a second reading, and then it goes into, I guess, law within 21 days after that. Correct, Mr. Carter?
That's correct.
Okay.
This is being introduced still as first reading.
First reading.
Okay, so my question is, if this is a first reading and it's approved tonight, doesn't that allow it to go on to the planning board?
Yes.
Correct. That's why it's been introduced now, because I believe it's going to be on the upcoming agenda. So administratively, we thought since it goes back to July of 2020, it's been such a long time between first, we would reintroduce it on first reading. And so that it's more current in everyone's mind as it goes before the planning board.
Okay, so,
This is just mechanics, it's not all required.
okay, but, so then something does happen. It's not like nothing happens. If you approve it, it goes on to the planning board, and if the planning board approves it, then that allows the zoning to be changed, correct?
Second reading for the change. Now, the planning board never heard it since July of 2020. It never made their agenda. Either they didn't have an agenda, no.
Right, I understand
comment on that. So it's been a long time now, and now I understand it's going to get put on their agenda. So that's why we just want it publicly read again, so it's in everybody's thought.
Okay, I understand that, but what I'm trying to get straight in my head is, if you approve it tonight, it goes to the planning board. And if the planning board approves it, does that mean that the zoning for that piece of property is now a commercial / residential property?
Well, I'm
Forever.
out here for a second reading of the ordinance. When the ordinance is approved by council, then it becomes effective after the time lapse, and that's the zoning.
So even if the ordinance is not approved by council, does the zoning for the land change or
Council
not?
rejects it, doesn't it? No. The answer is no.
Okay, so then, I guess my question is, what is the point of sending it to the planning board?
That's statutory. Council, the planning board has to have a say. Council can override planning board say. The planning board has to have a say, and that's why it goes before.
So council couldn't approve it unless the planning board said it was okay.
Right. Now, there's a time lapse, and we force the planning board in, they're not hearing what have you, but they have to have a say, and council can agree or disagree. We don't do our second reading until the planning board has introduced it. Can I make some comments?
Council President, I'll just say the planning board has to review all land use type ordinances. Council has to refer them to the planning board by statute. The planning board can comment or not, but they normally do.
And could the planning board hear this before council passes this resolution?
Yes, it's introduced tonight. If it's introduced tonight, it'll be presented to the planning board at their meeting in April, which is in 2 weeks. And then they'll make a recommendation to council, and then council will have a public hearing on it, second reading.
Okay,
Thank you. Ms. Coyne, I'm sorry, your time is up.
thank you.
Mr. Heinball?
Behind Ball Morningstar Court. Of course, I have a couple of questions related to the budget. First, the 3.8 million were scheduled to receive related for COVID type aid, federal COVID aid. How is that being handled in that budget?
Mr. Carter?
We don't know. We haven't been given solid directions as to how to use. I mean, I did get a notice from Cory Booker in the very last section. I would say that you can't use the funds for pension reduction, and you can't use the funds for pensions that, or you can't use the funds also to reduce your tax levy.
But we are recognizing this revenue in our 2021 budget? Oh,
No,
we're not. We're not.
we're not.
Not allowed to put in.
Okay. And then the related expenditures that you were planning to use for that 2021, with this COVID grant, you don't have those built into the 21 budget either?
No, we don't
Okay.
know what we're able to use.
Okay. Another question, for 2020, probably the biggest single category of expenditure in the budget, salary and wages. An assumption was used for the 2020 budget of a 5.3% increase based on a couple of different factors. What is the basis that was used for the 2021 budget?
2.5.
Plus 2.5? Yeah, what?
We're in negotiations on all contracts right now.
And that's related to potential raises through collective bargaining agreements and things like that. That's why that, part of what made up that 5.3 last year was a statement that was made that is because just the way the calendar worked, instead of 26 pay periods, there were 27 pay periods in 2020. So that was part of what made up the 5.3. That's what it was explained.
Yeah, hourly employees.
So is it back to 26 pay periods in 2021? So that would be a reduction compared to what actually happened in 2020, about a couple percent.
I don't know how much contributed to that.
Well, that's what a budget, okay. I would think that's what you wanted to figure out for a budget.
There are other reasons. There are, in the control contract, there are steps. And those steps exceed those percentages as police officers move through those steps. So that's a contributing factor also. That's contractual.
So the decrease in pay periods was offset by pay rate increases, and it netted out to a plus 2.5%. That's what you assumed for the budget.
You asked me what we put in.
Yeah.
Did not put in just the schedule for, it's contractual for the police officers that are looking for that.
Okay, the last question on the budget then. Mr. Hutchinson, you were talking about forming a subcommittee. Is it formed?
No, I didn't say something.
Okay.
I said I'm gonna sit down with 2 other individuals on this council, and we're gonna go through it. That's not a formal subcommittee.
Is this informal group formed?
I told both individuals I want to sit, whether or not it's gonna be with them both at the same time, individually, I don't know.
What do you expect to look at in the budget when you go through?
Am I understanding the question? What do I expect to look at?
Yeah, what kind of things will you be looking to analyze or scrutinize when you sit down with the budget?
So Pete, I'm gonna look at the revenue. I'm gonna look at the department. I'm gonna look at how they're spending money in the department. I'm gonna answer any questions that Ms. Grace may have, as this is her first budget she's looking at. If I can't answer a question, which I'm sure that's gonna happen, I'm going to ask the business administrator. If I have questions for a department head, we're in a Faulkner out of town, and I will ask the mayor or the administration if I can ask questions of the department head. But, I like you, Pete, but I'm not gonna sit with you and go over this budget. I'm gonna go over it with them, okay?
Yeah, I was asking, yeah, okay. Well, thank you for offering that. So there is no formal subcommittee that will be formed.
As
For the budget.
I'm not council president.
I'm
not
asking
council
you,
vice
I'm sorry,
president, I have no
Mr. President, there will be no formal budget subcommittee.
I have not appointed one. Today, council received their budgets. So Mr. Cars will formally introduce the administration's budget for the upcoming year. And, it's my discretion if I appoint a subcommittee. Okay. I'm sorry, your time's up, Mr. Hines.
Okay.
Is there anyone else? Brian, you're our last speaker because we're gonna read our 15-minute time limit.
Good evening, Council. Brian Burns and Ariel. I usually don't speak on agenda items, but this particular one kind of stuck out to me because my whole life has been the landscape horticultural industry. And I see there's a contract up for approval, actually 2 contracts with Marksman Landscaping over a 2-year period for $404,000. I thought we did all of our landscaping and whatnot in-house.
No, for quite some time, we have subbed out some of our landscaping. Mr. Carter?
We have been putting out specs, probably going on 25, 30 years now, for all of our buildings, and some of our other areas like Veterans Park, the memorial out at Gloucester Township Community Park, those types of areas are subbed out.
Does that save the township money by not having to hire in-house people and paying benefits and pensions and whatnot?
I believe so. Health benefits,
Right.
pensions, all those.
Okay, that's what I wanted to check up on. Thank you.
And it's seasonal, so.
You know, we have time for one more speaker. Anyone who has not spoken this evening? Lady in the back, sorry to point at you. You will be our last speaker. Sorry to point at you.
No worries. Dawn Spella, 1061 Choose Landing Road. Hello.
Hello.
Question about Little Pond. I was just wondering, what was the reason for it being held up between July and now?
Mr. Carlman?
The only thing I could say is planning board, I would imagine they can answer it best to or a planner, sorry. The planning board wasn't meeting and it was just off the agenda, they had other pressing business and this just never, just kind of took its time. We were not under pressure because this is part of our settlement agreement, our fair share plan. And we don't anticipate that getting back before the courts when it was introduced. We were moving quickly to get back on the court agenda, but with the courts being closed, it's not moving in that thing. Fair share housing and the objectors to it as part of this had no opposition to it just sitting for a while, so it just kind of said.
Can I ask one other question?
Yes.
Regarding that, and maybe it's more of a planning board, but I mean, is there a consideration to what that potential development would, how it would impact that local area? I mean, Choose Lane is already pretty heavily, traversed, and I just foresee a lot of extra traffic that wouldn't be necessary and heavier impact. It's a great little section of stores that we have, and I think they all do rather well.
Dawn, because you're at 1061, did you notice when the planning board had their meetings regarding this particular project?
In all honesty, I haven't. I know you said there's one coming up in April.
Normally during the planning boards, their meetings, the developer, whomever it may be, they sit down, they do a formal presentation. Questions are asked by the board regarding presentation. There's an impact study that's done, a traffic study on a project. Those things are taken into account, the impact, if there's going to be additional children in the school. Those are some of the things that go through when there's a planning board application. So those questions could be answered, or you could go to when that meeting takes place. Mr. Leckman, you said April, and they meet the 2nd and 4th Tuesdays of the month?
Yes.
Excuse me, April. We are in April. I'm
It
sorry.
may be April 28th, but I don't have a calendar on
That'll be the 27th of April.
it. 27th of April.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll close the first public portion. Mayor's memo.
Meeting April 8th, please list the following appointments on the council agenda for April 12th. Housing Authority appointment for 20 Pearson to fill the unexpired term of Scott Marks. His term is until December 31st of 2024.
And we have an additional memo from the chief.
Dated April 12th, I am requesting the following persons be appointed as a class 1 special law enforcement officer for the Gloucester Township Police Department effective April 12th, 2021. Josephine Camarello, Jared Ebert, Tyler Knopf, David LaBar, and Robert Boyd. New CO officer will begin training via the Town College Police Academy and the Gloucester Township Police Department Professional Standards Bureau. Mayor has authorized the silence.
Thank you, clerk and chief. Bid reports.
Landscape maintenance, cutting of retention basins, and traffic signal maintenance.
I entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second. On the question. Roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchinson?
Yes.
Ms. Graves? Mr. Leon?
Yes.
Mrs. Stubbs? Yes. Mrs. Leonard? Yes. Mrs. Strato?
Yes.
Mr. Mercado?
Yes. Next is waive the reading, and accept the minutes of March 8th and March 22nd. Entertain a motion
So moved.
Second.
on the question. Roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchinson?
Yes.
Ms. Grace? Mr. Leon?
Yes to March the 8th, and I abstain from March the 22nd.
Mrs. Stubbs? Yes, for March 22nd, I abstain for March 8th. Mrs. Leonard? Yes. Mrs. Strato?
Yes.
Mr. Mercado?
Yes to both. Next is ordinance 0-20-07. It's the first reading. It is being reintroduced. It's the ordinance of the Township of Gloucester, County of Camden, and State of New Jersey, amending ordinance 0-03-03, land development, adopting a Little Pond Overlay, LPO, zoning district for block 20601, lots 4, 4.02, 5, and 6, Gloucester Township, Camden County, New Jersey. With this overlay, and before we get this, there's a slight amendment. Under section 1, my colleagues of council, it should read section 408.2. Mr. Lechner brought that to my attention. This overlay is consisting of townhomes, but also a 23,000 square foot single-story commercial unit where commercial is only permitted on the front of Choose Landing Road. Mr. Carmer, do you want to add anything else to that?
No.
Mr. Lechner?
No, I'm not.
So I entertain a motion with that amendment on section 408.1, under section 1.
I'll make that motion.
On the question, roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchinson?
Abstain?
Ms. Grace? Yes. Mr. Leon?
Yes.
Mrs. Stubbs? Yes. Mrs. Leonard? Yes. Mrs. Strato?
Yes.
Mr. Mercado?
Yes. Next is ordinance 0-21- I'm sorry. Next two ordinances. Ordinance 0-21-06 and 0-21-07. I'm going to pull off the agenda. Could I have a motion to pull those off the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
On the question, roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchinson?
Yes.
Ms. Grace? Yes. Mr. Leon?
Yes.
Mrs. Stubbs? Yes. Mrs. Leonard? Yes. Mrs. Strato?
Yes.
Mr. Mercado?
Yes. Next, ordinance, a second reading. There will be a public hearing. On the original publication of this ordinance, it had Lakeland. That is incorrect. It's Blackwood West redevelopment. So, ordinance 0-21-04, ordinance of the Township of Gloucester, County of Camden, and State of New Jersey, adopting amendment number 4, amending ordinance 0-04-13, entitled the Blackwood West redevelopment plan in accordance with NJSA 48-12A-1 et local redevelopment and housing law. This permits in tattoo and body piercing not to exceed 25% of the total first floor area or 2 stations, whichever is less, combined with either retail sales and services or personnel services at 12 North Black Horse Pike, block 10606, lot 9. We'll now open up the public hearing. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. I entertain a motion.
So moved.
On the question, roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchinson?
Yes.
Ms. Grace? Yes. Mr. Leon?
Yes.
Mrs. Stubbs? Yes. Mrs. Leonard? Yes. Mrs. Strato?
Yes.
Mr. Mercado?
Yes. Next, we have our consent agenda. Any council member that would like to move any of the items on the consent agenda, please speak up. Hearing none, I entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented. On the question, roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchinson?
I will abstain from resolution 21-04-100 and yes to the remainder of the resolution.
Ms. Grace? Yes. Mr. Leon?
Yes.
Mrs. Stubbs? Yes. Mrs. Leonard? Yes. Mrs. Strato?
Yes.
Mr. Mercado?
Yes.
Resolution 21-105, resolution to anticipate miscellaneous revenues of 2021 budget using the 3-year average of realized revenues from the prior 3 years.
Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Is there a second? Thank you, Mrs. Grace. On the question, roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchinson?
Yes.
Ms. Grace? Mr. Leon?
Yes.
Mrs. Stubbs? Yes. Mrs. Leonard? Yes. Estrada?
Yes.
Mr. Mercado?
Yes.
Resolution 21-106, resolution approving instruction on providing notice for public hearing and public inspection of the 2021 municipal budget.
This is the introduction of the 2021 municipal budget. Mr. Curtis?
Yes, the budget has total appropriations of $69,074,204.92. It also has an amount to be raised by taxation of $53,333,030.92. And it has a zero increase in the tax rate. The rate is actually 1.181.
Thank you, Mr. Curtis. I entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Ms. Graves? Mr. Mignone?
Yes.
Mrs. Stubbs? Mrs. Winter? Yes. Mrs. Estrada?
Yes.
Mr. Mercado?
Yes.
Resolution 21-107, resolution of the Township Council of the Township of Gloucester, County of Kansas, and State of New Jersey, governing body certification of compliance with the United States Equal Employment Opportunity Commission's enforcement guidance on the consideration of harassment conviction records and employment decisions under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964.
I entertain a motion.
So moved.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Ms. Graves? Mr. Mignone?
Yes.
Mrs. Stubbs? Mrs. Winter? Yes. Mrs. Estrada?
Yes.
Mr. Mercado?
Yes.
Resolution 21-108, resolution approving open space tax levy for 2021.
I entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Ms. Graves? Mr. Mignone?
Yes.
Mrs. Stubbs? Yes. Mrs. Winter? Yes. Mrs. Estrada?
Yes.
Mr. Mercado?
Yes. We have a few GTE Gov access emails. This comes from Lauren Williams, 3 Slate Court. Hi, my child and his friends have been playing basketball in the street, and the neighbor has called the police several times. And at this point, I feel like my child is being harassed by the neighbors. We live in Cobblestone, and this is happening on Bluestone Circle. Please let me know what options are. I spoke to Colton McLaughlin earlier, and she has spoken to this resident. They have resolved the issue. Next is from Estelle Johnson at 119 Prospect Avenue. First question, it says it's a zoning question. Is Prospect a part of Brittany Woods? We used to have another development name, but the sign is gone. If not a part of Brittany Woods, where's the original development sign? Prospect, I don't believe, is not a part of Brittany Woods. And I don't recall if there was ever a sign there.
I don't recall either, Mr. President.
There's an easement question from Ms. Johnson as well. Our easement is now gated off by the properties on the end. As a result, the Middletown homes do not have walking access to enter or exit. Is it legal to block off access per zoning codes? I think that's for the section in Brittany Woods. I'll follow up on that question. I don't have the immediate answer to that. A neighbor issue. Burning leaves, a neighbor is burning leaves in their backyard of home on Yorkshire. Who do I call to address this issue? Code enforcement, police, chief?
If it's an immediate issue, we can take the information, Mr. President, and then if it's an enforcement issue, we can notify the fire marshal or code enforcement. I recommend they contact the police and we'll get things going.
Okay, thank you, chief. And lastly, who do we contact about community enhancement team and the litter patrol cleaning easements in Brittany Woods and on Prospect? Mr. Cardis, I'll forward you this email. And Ms. Grace, you brought this to my attention over the weekend. I'll also copy you on that email as well. Thank you. Next is our second public portion. This public portion is for any item the public chooses to address council. There's a 30-minute time limit. Each speaker is entitled to 5 minutes. After everyone has addressed the council, if they've spoken one time, they can come back again once everyone else has had an opportunity to speak. I now open up the public portion. Mr. Krug.
Evening again, Council. Paul Krug, Blackwood Estates.
Good evening.
Just first, Dan, at least my expectation would be hopefully a decrease of above zero, hopefully above the 3% range, coming off of 9.75 last year and 350% increases in municipal budget between 98 and 2018.
I expect the mayor and the administration to put together a very tight budget form, but I will look at the budget and we'll study.
Thank you, appreciate that. With some of the remarks from the workshop with regard to Denise's efforts, I will say she did reach out to Nancy on ordinance 2104 to let her know that it wasn't the Lakeland complex, it was Blackwood West. So I cherish the work that Denise does, and it's across multiple fronts, and I'm glad she pays attention to the details.
Thank you, Ms. Coyne, for that.
In addition, and on that subject and how I've also been treated with regard, I wanted to speak a bit tonight on the unique form of government we've been given, representative government. I'd like to start with a rhetorical question. You got a safety or budget concern, say with the recent retaining wall collapse of the 295-76 direct connection project, and you went to your local state representative or New Jersey Department of Transportation official to voice your concern, and in return, you were told that your concern sounds rehearsed, that you were grandstanding, or that you were just trying to get a sound bite. How would you feel? How would you respond? Now, imagine you continue to follow up on the situation for the following year, yet your safety concerns were never properly addressed, and the budget continued to balloon with overages. I'm certain you would begin to question the validity of representative government. Interestingly, the situation described in this theoretical example is exactly what has happened to me in this chamber. Thinking back on my 2+ years of consistently attending council meetings, I've only submitted concern or recommendation on 2 main topics, none of which has properly been considered or addressed. Firstly, I raised serious concern with the completion percentage of, at the time, a 15-year-old Blackwood West redevelopment plan, now 17 years old. The same concerns and questions exist. At council meetings, I highlighted specifics of the plan, spotlighting property opportunities and tactics by which to promote downtown. I went so far as to visit downtown business owners, whether it be Kelly at Mystic Ginger or Shayna at the former Wild Fig. I shared all these details with council members via email, never receiving more than a thanks in response. I'm still waiting on 3 formal requests to Council President Mercado for either T&M Associates or Triad Associates to attend the meeting and explain the execution plan, as they do for other townships. Secondarily, with the FY21 budget quickly approaching, I've expressed sincere concern with the rise in municipal taxes over the last 2 decades, having risen by approximately 350% under this council and the administration. Once again, I don't sit idly and simply criticize. I joined supporting the citizens' budget last year, which dropped the proposed tax rate increase from 10.5% to 3.8% without touching employee salaries or police personnel and equipment. At the time, Township Administrator Tom Cardis was quoted in the Sicklerville Sun as saying it was an irresponsible way to budget and not prudent. Well, as it turns out, after a review of the 2020 actual budget expenditures, the citizens' budget was approximately $2.8 million closer to the actual expenditures, which means that instead of over budgeting and effectively overtaxing the GT citizens by $3.8 million, if council and administration had listened to its constituents, the surplus could have been a more reasonable $950,000. As you can see from these examples, you can feel the same way you answered the rhetorical question, as though representative government is a figment, especially when well-prepared and intentioned dialogue is consistently met with, "You won't convince me," and "Thank you, your time is up." So, can you explain how I obtain representation from this council? Not the lip service kind. We'll look into it, or we hope for the best. But the get it done, results-based type.
Are you done?
Mr. Krug, can I ask you a question? I'm sorry. When you talk about the citizens' budget, and you've talked about this over the last year or so, and I just want a clarification. Correct me if I'm wrong. For those who are watching from live stream, this citizens' budget was put together by a handful of people. Am I correct?
That's correct.
So rather, I know you titled it or was coined the citizens' budget, but it was a budget put together by 2 or 3 people.
A couple
So
more,
I
I
think-
believe, but concerned citizens.
So it could be misleading, the citizens' budget. So a group of 2 or 3 people put a budget together and they made a recommendation to council and to the business administrator. So just a point of clarity for folks that are viewing
Usually
online.
reports have a title, so the title was citizens' budget. I don't think that's of much matter.
So
What's of matter is that it
A
was
few
$2.8 million closer to the actual expenditures without having the type of detail of the township administrator. About attaining the representation in the execution form is,
I think that my colleagues and myself represent our township very well, that we are available to our residents. I think that we're deeply involved in our community. There are some things I know perhaps government doesn't work as fast as you would like it to work, Mr. Krug. I'm also disappointed that Blackwood West is not what we envisioned 17 years ago in that Blackwood redevelopment plan. Unfortunately, I have an economic development background. I used to work for the Camden Redevelopment Agency, and I would see where we would get studies. In those studies, you spend a substantial amount of money. It looks wonderful, the pictures, and then you put it on a shelf and it collects dust. Sometimes the economics of what's happening in the real world dictate what's going to happen in a particular area. If we take a look at Blackwood Clementon Road, I never knew what this word charrette was. Remember when Mr. Lechner, you talked about a charrette where we invited the public to come in and discuss what we wanted to see on Blackwood Clementon Road, limiting the amount of lanes. At the time, Mayor Ralph Hatton was the mayor and put a charrette together, stakeholders, and talked about how we could limit Blackwood Clementon Road, put a greenway in the middle. Okay, then we had a recession hit. Blackwood redevelopment area, downtown Blackwood has its challenges. No one's going to disagree with you on that. T&N Associates is putting a plan, they've updated. Mr. Lechner and I spoke a few months ago about having them come into our workshop, and that's going to happen very shortly because we as well want to hear what they have envisioned and have that updated for Blackwood West. So some of the things that you bring to the table, we hear you, Mr. Krug. And unfortunately, I'm sorry, we don't respond as fast enough or quickly as you want us to. Sometimes there's limitations to certain things. So
I
but I think
understand what you're saying with the time, and I'm willing to grant that, but can you give me an idea? Is it another 15 years, 17 years? When can I expect for movement on that project in a positive direction? Now, you helped with Nicholas this evening, but Nicholas is going to be out on an island if there isn't a plan to help support cross-pollination of sales in downtown Blackwood. So he got it approved, but he's going to be on an island. I hope, and I will support his business to be able to operate there, but certainly a better plan needs to be in place. And I've been asking for T&M or Triad to visit us and explain some semblance of a plan for execution.
and they will be here, but some of the things that the township has tried to secure in the past, additional parking for downtown Blackwood, parking at the old PNC, that little area there. The gas station, we talked about the gas station, I forget the name of it, it's called. at the gas station on the corner for additional parking. The signature events that we have in downtown Blackwood brings people into that particular area. But it also comes down to a viable business plan and what works. And everyone wants to replicate Collingswood. Other than Collingswood, when I was in grad school for 2 years, and in the late 90s, and the only place to go was the Wawa on Haddon Avenue there. And so after I left, there was a boom and for downtown Collingswood. And it was my hope when Wild Pig was there, and you have Ginger across the street, and you have the pizzeria Flames there, that we would build upon what was there. And then we had the pandemic hit, and Shayna's no longer there. And you know, I'm not sure how Flames is doing. I go by, I see some folks there. But you look at Meadows, and you know, Meadows is Meadows. People are going to go to a diner. But again, I think it goes down to a business plan, what's viable, what are the needs of people in that particular area, and identifying it. That bank on the corner, I hate driving by and seeing that bank because that awning was supposed to be fixed, correct me, Mr. Leckner, about 7-8 years ago, and that awning, when you go on Church Street, has not been fixed. And we had a dance company there. We had, you know, people say, hey, I think you brought it up. And people said, yeah, a brewery would look good there. But again, is it viable? Do they have a business plan? Do they have the capital? Because I believe that we would support a business like that. When Nick came here to talk about his tattoo place, hey, I'm not the biggest fan of tattoos. But you know what? There's nothing that was going to go in there. There was nothing. We need to generate interest here, foot traffic there. And God bless him. I'm glad he invested in the downtown Blackwood, and I hope that he's successful there.
Council President, I just want to point out, well, you referenced lip service, okay? That's a perfect example, okay, of why it's not lip service. First of all, you expressed serious concern to me. So we went down to downtown Blackwood. I walked around on an afternoon with you. And I thought it was a good day. You showed your compassion and your care for that section of the day. When Nicholas came to this meeting, it didn't look positive. At least he didn't feel positive. I talked to him. I introduced myself before the meeting, told me who he was here for. I said, you need to talk to someone. And I gave him your name and your number because you care about that portion of the town. I said, you care about other things. And so I introduced you to him. We worked, I think, together to help him achieve his goal. Okay. Now that's a success. Now, an investor has to want to come here. We want investment to come here. We do, okay? We are, as a body, we want this to work. I've asked you to be involved on this topic. Now, granted, this past year has been very difficult, but for you to stand there and to make it sound as if you're getting lip service and nobody's inviting you into this conversation, I don't think that's fair. I think I've reached out to you.
Yes, you did pass Nicholas along to
But
me.
not
I
only
did
that.
speak to Nicholas. You did meet me downtown. We did have a
And
talk.
didn't I
But
ask you to get
what-
involved in economic development? What is it?
Corporation.
Corporation.
So I have reached out to Brian,
Or you have.
who's on, I've reached out to Brian. They haven't met much this past year.
But I
There has
asked you
been
to
no
do it.
movement. And my understanding is that some of the strategic objectives of that organization maybe aren't what's right for downtown Blackwood.
But you're the
And
person that I think,
this is doing the Nicholas, I agree. Thank you for hooking me up with him. Thank you for welcoming him. One thing, right? But what I'm talking about is the larger plan here. It's 17 years old. We had a good first plan. Now we're waiting on the second plan. I haven't heard. All I want to hear is from Triad Associates. Hey, this is our approach. This is how we think it could go. I'm a citizen who's sitting here for 2 years while downtown still is, slumped over. I just want to hear what is the larger strategic plan here to move this forward.
well, I want you, if I have a say, I want you to be involved. Okay, I do. Okay, you have shown me that you care about that. I will do what I can. Now, we're gonna do combat here once in a while, and that's fine, but at the end of every meeting, at the beginning of every meeting, I say hello to you, and I sincerely mean it, okay? I really do. I want you involved. We need people in this town to not just complain, but to get involved and make a difference.
Agreed. And I know my time's up. Council President, I just want to say, I don't expect us to be Collingswood either. I realize that's probably a stretch, but I do think we could be a Pittman, or I even think Runnymede has been turning their downtown around in a way that we could too. And the fact you informing me of the parking lots is more conversation than we've had on this, and I hope we can continue, because I think, as Dan said, we can be proactive. Thank
And
you.
I'll get a date from Mr. Lechner. We'll invite Tina to come into our workshop.
Thank you. I
Thank you,
appreciate
Mr.
it.
Lechner. Is there anyone else? Mr. Polidoro.
Good evening again, Council. Ray Polidor from the Historic Village of Ariel. Earlier this evening in the workshop session, I had asked some folks to stay up close to their microphones. I reached out to some people watching on the live stream. They cannot hear the solicitor and the administrator, otherwise known as the lawyer and the accountant for the township. And we're approaching an extremely important part of the well-being and the state of the township with the new budget. If it's possible, could you two gentlemen maybe bring those microphones closer, because they're not going to pick up the two in the center. But if they were to be closer, okay, or find some better way of audio. The two of you are going to be speaking on one, if not one of the most important subjects matter that affect the people of our township, besides public safety, is this body is the custodian of the tax dollars and how our money is spent. So with the folks that are trying to listen intently to what's going on, some of the more important facts are going to come from the township solicitor and the township administrator. So if you would be respectful to people on the live stream, and in the back, it's hard. I know that you'd like me to keep my camera back there, and I guess the audio on that is probably better than my hearing, but it would be nice if everyone could hear exactly what's going on. It's important to them as it is important to me. If I heard Mr. Cardis correctly, was that a zero increase that we're seeing this year?
Zero increase on the tax rate, yes.
Okay, so basically we'll stay as high as we were. We're not going down. We're not going any further up. I can't reach that high up.
Comparison to something that you want to
Well,
know.
where we've gone in the last,
There is a zero increase in
Okay.
the tax rate in last year's rate.
okay, 4 of the 7 years we went up, but we're not going up any higher. That's very, very pleasing to hear. One of the things that's been requested of this body, in particular, one or two council people, is that there's a select few people that come up here with problems and voicing their comments, and sometimes labeled. One of the things that's commented is that you're going to come up here with questions, come up here with solutions. And last year, a group of people did put together a very well thought out and extremely difficult, time-consuming budget. I myself am not a numbers person that could sit down and do those. It takes a special talent. It takes an amazing amount of patience and a lot of hard work. So they not only came to you with a question, they came to you with a solution. And it was handed to you, and for lack of a better word, you downgraded that, almost poo-pooed their efforts. Now, you say that there's the same select few, and you label them. In fact, a little earlier, there was a hint of folks that come to the meeting in the small group conspiring to get together on an issue. If a few select people that come to all these council meetings and really are attentive to the day-to-day operations of this township and addressing and redressing their government, get together on a subject matter is conspiring, then maybe you're not paying close enough attention to the citizens of this township, because they're the same people that come year round. There are occasions when a subject matter will come up and more folks will join us. Tonight, we have 11 people, a little over double what we usually have, and one journalist. Now, I don't want to go into the politics of the even and odd number years, but next year, as we did in 14, 16, and 18, when the people get their tax bill or it is put out in a network that they can see it ahead of time, when you have a tax increase, as was the case in 14, 16, 18, and 20, the room is full of people. Each individual person comes up here and speaks their mind. Some had very, very difficult stories. Some may even be okay with what you're doing to the rest of all of us. But each individual comes up here in a room full of people. So I think it would be more respectful of the one, the two, the few, or the many that, as the comment was made earlier, that are you supposed to basically bend over backwards for one person? Yes. Yes, you should. It was similar to one person, for one person to bring this up, and then that got turned into something of a group conspiring. One person has an issue, whatever it may be to that individual. It's just as important as the group of people.
I think it's very important that everybody have an opportunity to stand at the microphone and say what's on their mind. But, you know, a lot of what you say, you characterize in such a way that I don't hear it. I mean, what you just said, that's not even close to what I heard this evening.
Well, sometimes when you're standing too close to a piece of art, you can't tell what the art is. If you back up a couple of steps, you'll see it much better. Ordinarily, when a resident is speaking, it's council president, it's Councilman Mercado, president of this council, generally that we address, and he grants you the permission to respond to me. Sometimes there's liberties used. I understand that. I've been coming here long enough, and I have respect for you, but sometimes what goes on in this town and the way that the council treats some folks that come up here, I don't ever mean to be disrespectful. I don't ever raise my voice. I don't name call. I'll never point my finger. And you give me somewhat of the treatment in return. But it doesn't make what you do to the people of the township and their hard-earned dollars any less difficult to deal with. So when people are putting a budget together, as they did last year, put your heart into taking a look at it, because this is an odd number year. The room will be full next year, this time in late April or May, or when it comes time to pass that budget. You know, zero is nothing to be proud of after what the history of this township has done to the people of it. So maybe, just maybe, when you say they have questions and come with solutions, they have, and maybe it's time to start listening to some of the folks and the individual, the one person comes up with something. Thank you for allowing me to go over the time. I greatly appreciate that. It's a mutual respect that we have for that. But please be mindful of these things. That's all I ask. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that have not spoken this evening? Miss? Right appointed to.
Danielle Lewis, 17 Crestmont.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your name again. Have your name again, I'm sorry.
Danielle Romitzky.
I didn't know.
Hello.
I'm at 17 Crestmont in Blackwood Estates. I just had a question. I'm not sure who to direct it to. But well, it's about we used to do the farmers market. We didn't do it last year for pandemic reasons, but we did it the year before, and I was just wondering if that's something we're considering this year. I mean, according with all the rules and everything like that, I guess. If vendors are willing to come out and do that and, you know, comply with like all the rules that apply, is that something that would be considered for?
I'd love to.
Danielle, I think it's been a few years since the farmer's market hasn't been operating. It just wasn't last year during the pandemic. That's something of a project of Blackwood West and also volunteers of that particular area. And it fell upon some of the volunteers that we had there were getting a little bit older, and their time was limited. and it lost some steam. Were you involved with it?
No,
Okay.
not running it, no, I just worked as a patron.
So,
I'd be happy to.
is that a volunteer?
Yes.
And Mr. Krug next to you as well?
No,
I want some overalls on you, Mr. Krug.
I'd be happy to.
No, but seriously, Danielle, that's something that we could reach out to Blackwood West about, because that was a wonderful event, or a series of events that ran from, I guess, Memorial Day on until September. But I will be frank with you, and anyone who's attended, anyone here regularly attended, it lost steam its last few years. And rather, there was more, you think of a farmer's market and produce and vegetables,
Yeah, that's really.
and fruit, but then you started seeing, knick-knack type of vendors that were going there, and there was more of them than the produce and vegetable and fruit. I can reach out to the market, the Blackwood West and the individuals that ran it, and see if there's any thought about reforming that particular organization, even if it's on a smaller scale and in a condensed calendar.
It would just.
Because that was a draw to downtown, and that's
Right.
something that you were.
Yeah, it'd be
Mr. Krug and
downtown
those-
and, something, we can go to and,
If
the
you
knick-knack stuff, I'm not opposed to. I agree, it was like getting overkill, like, the produce section was there, and that was great. That's really what I wanted, but, the knick-knack, like, I think a few are okay, but I don't think it has to be as big as it was. And that's something, I don't know who the vendors are, so, but I'd be happy to.
If, after you're done speaking, if you could leave your email and contact number, I'll reach out to you this week and see if we can get a hold of Blackwood West and those that were involved in it.
Okay.
And see if there's any conversations about restarting this. Okay?
Okay, great.
All right. You can come up here to the clerk, she'll take your information. Up here. All right, we have time for one more speaker. The lady in the back has not spoken this evening. She'll be our last speaker.
Good evening, Elizabeth Dugan Blenheim.
Hi, Elizabeth. Good to see you again.
I know that you removed some resolutions and ordinances. Was the one about appointing the new person to the housing authority in the agenda?
That was not removed.
That was not removed, okay. So I believe her name is Elizabeth Hunt.
Yes.
Is there a particular reason why she was chosen over other people? Or what qualifications does she have?
There are times, instances where people express an interest in serving in our community. They reach out to the mayor's office. Myself, in 2002, I reached out to 2 council members who said I was interested in becoming involved in my community, and they forwarded my name to Mayor Love at the time, and I was involved in the Human Relations Commission. Ms. Hunt expressed an interest. She has a master's in public administration from Rutgers University, and has been involved with organizations there, lives in our community, and has an interest in the housing authority.
Okay. Regarding the budget, the timing of the budget, do you know why it's passed in April? It feels like it's a little late.
Normally, and I'll tag in Mr. Cars, normally we have approved the budget at the first meeting in April. Last year was delayed. Mr. Cars, reasoning for this year?
Yeah, so the state of New Jersey set the date for introduction as March 31st for the first action meeting in April. That would be tonight, the first action meeting.
Right, because I think from what I know that the statutes has a date earlier. Now, I think I'm told that the local finance notices have pushed that date. So that's why it's approved now. Still in the budget. if you compare last year's budget where there was a 9 point whatever% tax increase, and then you compare it with the draft of the budget at this point where there's a 0% tax increase, what makes this year different from last year? Like, why did we need more money and why do we need less money now? Less tax revenue.
It's a matter of the revenues that we apply to the appropriation and where the appropriations are. So as long as we have the revenues to offset any increase in the amount of paid by taxation, then we do that and keep the tax rate down.
So,
I would say that they're up to, we have been criticizing this, or at least I have, for not checking with the other taxing entities. Right now, as I understand, the local school has a 0 increase also, and the regional school actually has a decrease of 2.3%. The county, I cannot get numbers on that. They're still putting numbers together, and they would not produce them.
so which revenues do we have now versus last year? I'm trying to compare and contrast.
I mean, they're all different. I have to go through the whole thing.
Okay. When will the budget be available online?
The
introduced
budget.
Which meeting is that tonight or is that tomorrow?
Or probably tomorrow.
There was a resolution passed regarding the methodology in preparing the miscellaneous revenues in the budget by taking a 3-year average. Did council notice that a couple of those numbers were either, okay, if you take the 2020 column, that some of the numbers were 0 or close to 0, thereby skewing a 3-year average?
I went by the average up there. I did see those numbers, yes.
I'm just thinking that maybe a better thing to do, so that's probably closer to reality, would be maybe taking, because like the 2020 budget was probably 0 because there were activities that didn't happen. Like the one that I'm thinking of is the pool fees or whatever.
So that was a 0. That
was a 0.
on
So
this
I don't know
chart.
why you would include that as in a 3-year average and then say, okay, this is what we predict that the pool fees will be this year.
Yes.
We are planning to open the pool. We're planning to open the pool, we're planning to reduce the membership from, I believe, 200 to 150 families. And we have done it, we're doing it under CDC guidelines. So the pool is not going to remain closed.
Right, okay. So I'm wondering if instead of using an average, which is kind of like, throwing a dartboard, if it would be better to like say, okay, let's say the number was 70,000, you divide it by 250, and then, the number this year should be whatever divided by, same number divided by 150.
We established the 3-year average. In most cases, as I noted, going through the budget, the CFO put in the revenues a little bit lower than what the average is, so we're not maxing out at the average. But this again is a methodology that was passed out from the state of New Jersey Division of Local Government Services, and I recommend to the mayor and council that they embrace it.
Okay, but was there a further evaluation rather than just using what the state says is okay?
Yeah, we looked at the numbers that we had received in 2020, even with the pandemic, we did well in like construction. There were other areas that we did fairly well in. So we feel comfortable with these numbers are accurate.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Let's close the second public portion. Calling the directors.
Nothing to report. I just want to, I want everybody to be aware that we are opening the building on Monday, April 26th. We will be monitoring with the help of the chief and some specials, the intake, because that will begin the May Board of Collection taxes. You may have noticed in the past, the building closed, the drive-through line And so hopefully that will reduce some of that stress there and get some people in the building. It's not just the taxes, they can come in for anything that they need. So we're. That's all right.
I have nothing to report, thanks.
Parson?
Just a few things, Mr. President. I just want to acknowledge, we're joyed to have returned Patrolman Randy Pierce, who just returned from a one-year deployment at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. He was activated in the New Jersey National Guard, a military police unit, was in Guantanamo Bay, and he returned last week, and he's getting some well-deserved family time, but we're very thrilled to have him back and want to acknowledge his service to our country. I also want to just invite anyone. We unveiled on Autism Awareness Day, beautiful hardscape that's in the front of the building that our Public Works installed. The design was made through a community project, community activists, and a local company called Paper Art did the work, and it is just really a beautiful piece out front for celebrating neurodiversity for the township and the police department. I also just want to acknowledge this week is National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. And I know how much support the township's always been to our dispatch center. These are the unsung, unrecognized heroes of the police department in our public service world. They work 24/7 in a sometimes thankless job, a very difficult job, very high stress job. I just want to acknowledge them and let council know we have a fantastic group of men and women that work round the clock, 24/7, 365, keeping our town safe and keeping our officers safe is a great lifeline. So it's a great week that we're celebrating their dedicated service to our township. And in closing, for all those of the Muslim faith, just want to wish them a peaceful Ramadan that begins tomorrow, and have a peaceful and joyful Ramadan month. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Mr. Tarbell?
Nothing to report.
Go ahead, sir.
I want to say, I think that Gloucester Township is a great town. It's a wonderful place to live, to educate your family. I hear all the time individuals that I speak with inquiring about why is there nothing for sale in Gloucester Township? There are no homes. There's a house on, I think it was Empire recently. I drove by it the other day. So I know someone who put a bid in on it for $155,000, and they went outbid. This town is booming. Okay, it's a great place to live. Sometimes all we hear is something negative in this place. But I got news for you. Everybody I talk to loves this town. Have a good night.
Ms. Grace?
Just want to say thank you for coming out, the lively conversation. We'll follow up again with the housing authorities. But thank you again for coming out. Have a great night. Safe travels.
I want to say good luck to all our local little leagues and baseball teams in town. And it pains me, but unfortunately, we will not be having Field of Dreams this spring season. Unfortunately, with our players having morbidities, it's just unfair to put them in a position or a predicament that could be detrimental. As you know, they majority of them do need assistance at the plate. And as the vaccination ramps up, we'll be much safer, hopefully in the fall, to look to do something in the fall. If not, we're looking forward to 2022. Thank you, and everyone have a great night.
Mrs. Stutz? I'd like to thank everyone for coming out. Mrs. Leonard?
I want to thank everyone for coming out, the comments and discussion. And my public safety reminder, just please be careful, continue to mask up. If you have the opportunity and wish to get vaccinated, please do so. There are a lot of different avenues now that you can sign up for vaccinations. It's a little more, it's open more than it was before, and there's a lot more clinics that are out there. So please be careful.
Mrs. Sarda?
Thank you all for coming out. Have a good night.
Mr. Mercado?
I want to thank everyone for coming out this evening. 2 Saturdays ago, we celebrated the grand opening of the breakfast nook on Berlin Cross Keys Road. And that business, part owner, is a product of our school district here, a product of Gloucester Township Baseball, and is part owner and chef of the breakfast with Alex Domzowski. And so Mignon and I shared a sloppy breakfast sandwich over there in Greece, and it was wonderful. And so we look forward to their continued success there on Berlin Cross Keys Road. In addition, Councilman Trotto and Vice President Trotto attended the re-grand opening of Dunkin' Dunkin', the rebranding of it, the Donuts Bar South, in the Glendora section of our town, which serves as the gateway to our community. This past weekend, we also had the opportunity to attend the opening of Gloucester Township's baseball season. As you well know, we have 4 different baseball leagues in our community: Muriel, Glendora, Blackwood, Kiwanis, and GT Baseball. GT Baseball had their opening night on this past Friday with over 500 children there. And there was music, there was a food truck, and it was a wonderful event where people had a sense of normalcy again. But as I took a look at, this is the area in the Lakeland area, when people ask where does our open space money go towards, and some of the things, I took a look at those manicured fields, the lighting that's there, the fencing, when trash is taken away from there. Open space money is just not utilized to purchase open space, but also to maintain the spaces that we have in our community, whether it's our township parks, our passive or active fields. So that was a wonderful event. That's probably the largest event we've had in the township over the last year. So I wish Gloucester Township Baseball and their families the best. Going back to Glendora, we're seeing a lot of reopenings of houses of worship in the area. Mine included at Choose United Methodist Church, where they're finally going to open up and have individuals attend inside services. But something that has come out from this pandemic is that they provide food to individuals that are in need. At least once a month on a Saturday, it runs from 9:30 to 12:30. If you visit their website, Choose United Methodist Church, it's free, no questions asked. All they ask is for a reservation. But that is something that has come from something negative. They turned into a positive, and they expanded their food pantry there for our community. And last but not least, I want to thank the business administrator and the chief financial officer, Ms. Eric, on their work on the budget. And I look forward to having continued discussions on the budget as we move forward and adopting that budget in the month of May. With that, I entertain a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? All those in favor? Have a great evening, everyone.
When we're going to do